Now what we did is we mocked up a box that's the same size as the one you have that has this motor mount in it. The switch box that fits inside that hole has a flange on the outside. You will remove those 4 screws and pull that switch box out. The motor will come with this mount on it, and it has a angle like this. There's the channel that you guys are going to have to cut out, and then this distance from this side to the other side is 16 inches. This motor mount that you have in there now, find the center and go about 8 and a 16th, 8 and an 1/8 each way. Put your mark on there, and then we are going to cut that off with a angle grinder that has a cut-off wheel. Now that's not a grinding wheel, that is a cut-off wheel that cuts off on the edge. Now we're using a cordless one. You may or may not have that, but if not, I'm sure you can get access to a electric one that has the cut-off wheel, because that will make it easier to cut off, just in case you don't have a plasma cutter, but it'll make a cleaner cut, and then we'll video after that is cut. The big difference is this big motor and fan requires this base to be 1 inch lower. So there's a 1 inch drop between here and here, which that is to be the same as your motor mount. Now see, we've cut this off now. Okay, and now we will place the fan in here, and then we'll set the motor inside here, and then we'll marry up the fan and the motor together. Okay, the motor is numbered 1A and the fan is numbered 1A. You will have to put the fan inside the opening because it won't fit in sideways because this part is too wide. So you'll have to fit the fan inside the opening and then set the motor in there. And the fan will slide on. Put a little oil on the shaft and just it will slide on. Okay, and then you will have just a little bit of a shoulder inside there because it slid on as far as it could back here in the back. We will include some Loctite. You will remove the set screws, put Loctite on the screws, reinsert them. You'll have 2 of them, one there and one there. You'll put Loctite on both of them and then put the screws in. Okay, now we put a chain on this motor. Now we use a lift inside here. We have an overhead lift that we're going to use to lift that up and put that in there so we don't have to pick it up by hand. Okay, now we're going to insert the fan onto the motor shaft. You got to get that key lined up with that keyway. There it goes, slides on all the way. Now we are not going to tighten up the set screws here, because once you tighten up them set screws in there, that puts a little divot in that shaft, and it makes it very difficult to get on and off. So make sure that you have it in the right place before you tighten them up, because you don't want to pull that fan off if you don't have to. Okay, we got the inlet set in there. Now there's no screws on it. We've got that distance right here. Now you can take your finger and feel that distance right there and run your hand around. You can feel if you're closer or farther away. And that's how you line this thing up. What we'll do is we'll put a screw in here to just barely tight to where we can set that in place, and then we'll come around here and then we'll set the motor in place and kind of realign everything together. It's kind of move over here, move over there, keep working back and forth to get this thing perfectly aligned. Okay, now as we're lining this up, that's real close there by putting this oversized fan in. Okay, we've got an opening over there where it goes out the exhaust. So, but we've got to get this thing pushed forward to align up this distance right inside here, which I was feeling of right here earlier. And what are we, just about what, about a ½ inch away from that weld there, yeah, Carl? We get about a ½ inch away from that weld, about right there. So you'll have to pull the motor this way just a little bit. Now we're not going to weld this thing into this motor mount, because then we'd have to tear it all apart. But we're just doing this for you guys to see exactly. There we go. He just now pushed it in just a little bit. There we go. So we are just about right there. We're just almost up to that. There's about a 3/8 to a ½ inch between the edge of that. Let me get a little pointer here. About a 3/8 between the edge of that weld and this inlet. So that's about the distance that you've got right in there. Once that distance is established, you're comfortable that you have the motor square this way with, you know, the fan is square with the inlet this way. Be sure that whenever you start to weld this top, you just tack weld this, then you go back and you check everything again before you tack weld this. Now when I mean tack weld, I'm talking a 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 of a weld. So you tack weld that, check the fan inlet, make sure everything fits. You've always got just a little bit of adjustment on your inlet if for some reason that you get in there and it's not fitting. You can adjust your inlet, because the holes that the screws are in is a lot bigger than the screws. Now, once you got that side tacked, you're happy with it, go ahead and weld this side. Weld this side. You can weld this right down in here. You got a little gap there, but it's easily to be welded. And weld this right here. You should not have to weld the front side. It'll be very difficult to weld the front side. But if you get good welds on the top and welds right here, that'll all you'll have to hold this thing in place. Okay, then after that is done, then you'll have to take the electrical box with the flange, put it back up on here, put your screws back on there, put your wires in there, change out the overload, which we cover that in the other video, and then your HEPA bank will bolt here. Now there's no threads in here, but there's threads on yours that it will bolt right up to. And that's where it bolts up to. The HEPA bank bolts up to that. Now the plate that you take off of this, now we don't have a hole down here, but yours has a hole there. That plate comes off of here and bolts onto that down there.